Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to season 3 of the Profit Power Hour presented by Profit Coach. So glad you're joining us again today, as always, for a fantastic session to talk about insights from the National PM Pricing Report. And, I love this, the future of data-driven value creation. This is episode number 2 of season 3, and we have some great content planned for you today. And a favorite PM in the house as well, Peter Lohman. Thank you for being online with me today.
Hey, happy to be here, Daniel. This is great.
So, as always, it's nice to know that people are with us live. Approximately 57, 58 of you joining so far right now. And go ahead and jump into chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And Sam, by the way, says we love Peter. So Peter, you're loved.
Thank you,
And
Sam.
while you're jumping in, whenever we talk about pricing, we have to talk about gratitude, because if you're not talking about pricing in conjunction with gratitude, you just turn into a greedy monster. So what's one thing you're grateful for today in your personal life? I'm going to throw this out live and I'll pitch it to you, Peter. I was just reflecting on the first 5 years of business at Profit Coach. And I was thinking about all the different things we've done, the team members, and I was like, oh, yes. And then there's the most important player, my wife, who supported me all the way through. So I'm particularly thankful for Megan today. How about you?
Awesome. I'm just so thankful every day I wake up with a happy and healthy family.
Yeah.
Got two young kids and my wife and our dog, and it's hard to be too bitter if that's what you're coming home to at the end of every day, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, as I mentioned, some great content planned and a great panelist, Peter Lohman, owner of RL Property Management, and pretty much owner of the PM World on Twitter. No, just kidding. But Peter's got some great content that he releases through his Twitter feed and also his newsletter. And we want to make sure everybody has a chance to get access to the content that you release through your newsletter, because you put out things that are really relevant to the topic we're covering today. And then also me, Daniel Craig, author of the NARPM Accounting Standards, CEO here at Profit Coach. And we help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. All right. I love all the gratitudes coming in here from Andrew, the freedom to set my schedule. Karen, I love to read and write. And thankful for my precious husband, the sweet of my life. I love that, Karen. Good stuff. And I'm also grateful for family.
Knew this slide was coming.
Knew this slide was coming. New and improved family picture here. Joseph Daniel, number 4, 6 months old last month. I'm really thankful for him.
Need to get a hold of your family portrait photographer, because, man, always the best pictures.
She's a friend, and they come free, so I'm very blessed. So questions. If you have questions or Rotten Tomatoes that you want to throw at Peter during the session today, please drop those into the Q&A box so we can track those along the way. As we talk about insights from the National PM Pricing Report, this is something that I've never shared on the Profit Power Hour before. So I'm going to share data with you that I've never shared in this context. And then we're going to talk about, okay, if this is what people have been doing over the last 5, 6 years, where's the industry going related to pricing? Because I do think that this is the time to have a really heads-up conversation around what are the opportunities and what do those opportunities look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. As always, our purpose is to facilitate a transformation of mindset and thinking. This is critical in the area of pricing, to eliminate financial fog, move you to financial clarity, move from gut-based decision-making to predictable forecasting, and ultimately from mediocrity to benchmark mountaintop success. Are you ready? I feel like I need to cue the music again right now, but I know that the audience is totally amped.
Oh, no, we're hyped. They're hyped. We're hyped. It's going to be great.
Dive right in. So, as you know, we talk a lot about the 6 games that drive PM financial performance here at Profit Coach and on the Profit Power Hour. And this is important today because when we think about the game of profit and some of the trends that have happened over the last number of years, I was thinking about this, Peter, in conjunction with what we're talking about today, and I'm curious about your feedback on this. I really actually think that as you look at this profitability shift from 2017, 6% all the way up to 11%, or the top 25% of performers, 25% up to 32%. I think that there's obviously market factors, right? We were in a great economy in many respects. But I honestly think that a huge amount of this shift in our community has to do with monetization, sophistication, VMAXing, price increases, and overall the revenue per unit increases that we saw in the game of pricing, which are specifically 2017 average revenue per unit was 171. That went up to 221. Top 25% of companies went from 238 all the way up to 316. That's like a 40% increase in pricing in 4 years. I think a lot of the profitability shift has to do with this. What do you think?
Definitely. And I know that's true for my business. I was actually looking at our 2023 numbers, and almost all of our profit came from some of these programs that the industry has been talking about. So there's no doubt that it's made an impact. The overall professionalization, I think, of
Yeah.
the average property manager through education efforts that the industry is growing up and maturing, and the owners are becoming more sophisticated in their approach to business,
Yeah.
which is awesome to see. Very, very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's in the face of that trend that I want to get some audience feedback on government regulation. Because even as fee maxing has heightened up over the last number of years, so has the conversation about junk fees. In fact, I was at NARPM National last year where Gail Phillips, CEO, point blank told the audience, we are not going to talk about fees anymore. We're going to talk about services. And that kind of messaging is very much in response to what's going on with restrictions and regulations in various government localities. So I want to just put up a survey here real quickly. And the question is, how much of an impact will government regulation have on your pricing structure in the next 3 years? Number one, catastrophic impact, we will probably sell or go out of business. Significant impact, we will either lose or have big cutbacks on major revenue streams. Moderate impact, we will have to tweak some things and we will see our revenue decrease a bit, but not too much. Little impact, we'll be able to maintain our revenue per unit regardless. No impact, government regulation, what's that? We're in North Dakota, baby. All right, so just interested in some audience feedback on this one to get a sense of the overall temperature.
What's your prediction?
Well, I see the results coming in.
Oh, you already see them. Okay. I can't see them yet.
What's your prediction?
I predict kind of an even split between little and moderate, with the rest being kind of smaller numbers.
Okay, we've got 64% of respondents participating, so we'll let a few more people jump in. How would you put this for yourself, Peter?
Oh, I was going to vote. So for me here in Ohio, it's going to be little.
Yeah.
Actually, Ohio banned rent control at the state level about a year ago. Now, there could be some more local, like within the city of Columbus where I am, there could be some there, and there could be federal, but I don't think we're going to see much from the state. So I would probably say little.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and check out the results here. And actually, you weren't quite right, Peter. 13% say significant impact. Good news, nobody's planning to sell or go out of business, so that's nice. But the vast majority, moderate impact, we will have to tweak some things and we'll see our revenue per unit decrease a little bit, but not too much. What's your thought on this? How does this hit you?
Yeah, so I think the way it's hitting me is it's more of a concern than maybe I thought among my peers. So that's good to know. That's very interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to dive in, and obviously we contextualize this conversation with, the big picture of where we're at in terms of revenue per unit and the shift that's taking place over the last several years, 171 up to 222, 238 up to 317. That's a big number, by the way. And now I'm starting to see more and more people creeping up to 400 in total revenue per unit. And so this is important because revenue per unit is a top two driver of profitability. We've said this many times, say it again, a 10% increase in revenue per unit can easily produce a 100% increase in profitability. It's also important because pricing is growth, okay? And if you look at studies that have been done on recurring revenue businesses, pricing and monetization specifically is one of the most significant ways to grow your business. It's more significant than acquisition. In many cases, it's more significant than even retention. Monetization is huge. And so what we want to talk a little bit about is the progress and development of monetization and over the last number of years, and how that differs or parallels with value creation. So just to contextualize this a little bit, monetization is really what we're getting at when we talk about RPU aggressiveness, all right? It doesn't really say much about how much value you're providing to your people. I think there's two companies that can be providing relatively the same service and maybe even the same quality of service and have radically different revenue per unit, revenue per units as a result. And that really just comes down to monetization. So we measure monetization through this whole concept of RPU aggressiveness. And if you're not familiar with this, really need to get familiar, because this really helps you understand where you stack up to people in a similar average rent bracket in terms of the percent of rent that you're getting in total revenue per unit. And so quickly, for people that are 1,000 to 1,500, there's a range of anywhere from 11.8% to 18.4% of rent and total revenue per unit, or 10 to 18% in this bracket, or 9 to 13. And the point is, there can be radically different experiences and results in terms of monetization in this industry. And so it is an important conversation. So we kind of boil this down into a rule of thumb as to, if you want to be towards the top end of monetization, here are the percentages of average rent that you should be targeting between total tenant and owner paid fees based off of your average rent bracket. But what we want to talk about here is the difference between value and fees. What's the difference? And Peter, I'd like you to unpack this a little bit for just a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's Warren Buffett has a great saying. He says, "Price is what you pay, and value is what you get." And a lot of folks think those things are equal, but they're actually not, or you wouldn't make a transaction. So when you go to the store and you buy some bread, you buy a loaf of bread, you pay $3. You value the bread more highly than you value $3. If that wasn't true, you wouldn't buy it. And so when we're thinking about owning a small business, we need to think about both sides of this, which is, what's the value that our customers are receiving and what's the price that they're paying? Mm-hmm. And their price is our income, right? That's our revenue. So we're on the other side of that. And the value they receive is the work that we have to do. Mm-hmm. It'd be great if customers just gave us money for doing nothing, but unfortunately they expect us to do some stuff. Mm-hmm. So every business, in every business, there's a difference between the value that the customer's getting and the price that they're paying. The difference between those two things is called customer surplus. Mm. So let me give an extreme example, at least for me. Netflix. I pay whatever it is, $20 a month. I get access to essentially unlimited video content, more than I could ever consume in 1 month. Mm-hmm. That customer surplus is huge. I would pay way more for that. Mm-hmm. There's so much value there. And in fact, Netflix has figured that out and they've raised their prices. Mm-hmm. In other scenarios, the customer surplus may be almost zero. Yeah. You're like, and think about when you book a flight, right? You're right on the edge of what you're comfortable paying. If it was $100 more, maybe you would go somewhere else, or you choose a different airline. In that scenario, your customer surplus is almost zero. It's very, very small. What's interesting about this concept is, the larger the customer surplus, you can think of that as goodwill. And every time a customer transacts with you and receives a customer surplus, they get warm fuzzies about your business. They feel good. Wow, this is great. What a deal. Oh, these guys are amazing. Oh, this is great. And so the longer you do that, the more customer goodwill you're banking with any individual customer. you can start to erode that by raising your price and reducing that customer surplus. And especially for your long tenured customers with whom you have a lot of goodwill, you could probably raise your prices quite a bit before you start to notice any churn because you kind of banked a lot of that goodwill. But it's really interesting for me to think about what are the limits as an industry of how far we can push pricing before our customers decide it's not worth it. I'm
Right.
not interested at that price.
And a lot of that will have to do with outside forces as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get down to sort of that equilibrium where you have very little surplus
Mm-hmm.
of value, as soon as a competitor comes along,
Yep.
then or something happens in the market to change the conditions, that's when you may see the churn.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. That's great, by the way, Peter. I love that. And let's break this down a little bit. First of all, I want to just talk a minute about the difference between value and monetization. And I think this is important because one of the things I've heard a lot as I've consulted in this industry is things like, we don't want to nickel and dime people with fees. Okay. And what that is that's actually can represent a confusion between value and monetization strategy. Okay. So what I want to do here is distinguish between those. Value is, what your customer gets from the service that you provide, which could be intangible and often is intangible as well. It could be the overall experience of working with you. So it could be tangible, intangible. And then monetization is really just the strategy by which you're able to turn that value into revenue for you. Okay. And so I think that what's important is when we think about things like, I don't want to be nickel and diming my customers, or I just want one simple price for everything I do. That can represent a lack of sophistication in actually thinking about monetization, which is, okay, that may be what your customers like, and yet are you actually effectively monetizing the value that you're creating in every interaction?
Yeah. So like it's worth teasing apart as I think about this from the property manager seat. It's worth teasing apart. Am I uncomfortable charging my customers more at all?
Right.
Or am I uncomfortable charging my customers more in that way?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like some people are just philosophically opposed to charging a la carte, which is a nicer way of saying nickel and diming, and just want to give their customers one price, like an all-in price. That's great, and maybe you should think about raising that price. But other people are comfortable charging, sort of tying the monetization more closely to the incremental value pieces that the
Exactly.
customer is receiving in different scenarios and over time. And that may look like nickel and diming, but it may look different than what we've traditionally thought of as nickel and diming in our industry. So you may not like a particular like tactic that other property managers use to monetize or to drive revenue, but you should think separately about whether there's a way for you to increase your revenue using a different tactic that's more in alignment with your values or the way you like to do business.
Exactly. In other words, let's stop talking about fee maxing. Let's talk about monetization strategy. And you may not like one particular version of a monetization strategy, but let me warn you, if you're not thinking about monetization strategy as separate from value, then you're probably going to leave money on the table. Um, just doing a better job doesn't mean that you're going to see that value show up, in my opinion, at least in a way that is going to be healthy for your business. The lag could be so long that you really do monetization in a way that's detrimental to your business. I had a funny conversation the other day, Peter, with someone in the broader Profit Coach community who's attended a lot of these webinars, and I'm like, so tell me a little bit about your experience interacting with Profit Coach. And he's never been a client specifically. He says, but I just by listening to your content and hearing the advice, you probably made me $250,000 over the last 3 years in increased profits.
Wow.
And I'm like, how much money have you ever paid me? He said, not a dime.
Where's your Christmas card, Daniel?
Exactly. So that's a failure on my part to
You need to work on your monetization
I
strategy.
need to work on my monetization strategy. All right.
Webinars are $50 ahead moving
Yeah,
forward.
exactly. So there's a difference. Don't confuse them. They are parallel but different. And I would say that in this industry, probably what we're seeing is a trend towards monetization pushing, close to, in some cases, perhaps the actual value contributed to where we're at negative surplus. And that opens up the dynamic for some of these negative market forces that we're talking about. So the lesson there is don't get value monetization ahead of value. Peter, peering into the future, because I know you have a crystal ball there in your office.
Yeah,
Just
there it is.
talk a little bit about what you think people should be preparing for in terms of kind of the future of fee maxing monetization strategies and where profit margins and revenue is going in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a little bit about this in my newsletter. I do think that we're nearing the end of the fee maxing phase or cycle, super cycle within our industry. I think we're bumping up now against the limits of monetization in the way it's been done up until now. And you're seeing even the government has taken notice, right? So that I think we're kind of reaching the end of that. I don't know if we're going to get revenue per unit much higher using the same strategies that we've used up till now. Now, there's a lot of people in the industry who haven't fully baked and fully implemented a lot of what we've been talking about over the last few years. For those folks, there's still room to push that. I do think that we're going to start to see property management companies compete on price or have to compete on price in a way that they haven't for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be interesting, just due to the supply and demand. I mean, when you look at that revenue per unit, when you look at the profitability you showed on the previous few slides, this is America. This is capitalism. When there exists a small business with high margins, it invites competition. And thank goodness, or we wouldn't be able to enjoy the amazing lifestyle that we all do here in America.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing. I think maybe I'll have more to say as we go. I also did want to mention one thing. Let's set the stage for the monetization strategy that we all inherited. Everyone who owns a property management business, the monetization strategy. So when you're like, I don't have a monetization strategy. Well, you do. It's just that it's the one that our whole industry has sort of inherited or started with, which is classically percentage of rent with a leasing fee. Percentage of rent with a leasing fee. That is a monetization strategy. You could think of different ones. You could charge $3,000 a unit up front. You could charge $100 a month flat rate billed in arrears. You could charge $3 a day billed on a credit card. You could charge five times the rent for a leasing fee and no other charges, right? There's a lot of different ways that it could have been, but we all kind of inherited that as like the baseline. And so now it's time to rethink, is that serving us? Is that serving our customers? This sort of, now I know a lot of people have flat rate, including us, but I just want to set that as a way to think about what we're discussing.
So with that backdrop, I think one of the things I would just say, in addition to what you mentioned there about profit margins, Greg Crabtree, the author of Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits, leading kind of analyst in terms of small business economics in the country. A lot of people analyze publicly traded companies because that data is publicly available. Greg Crabtree does a lot of analysis. Thank you, Peter.
Great book. Highly recommended.
Yes, a lot of analysis on small businesses. And he says that if you're at 5% profit margin, you're break even. If you're at 10%, you're doing pretty well. And if you're at 15%, you better watch out. Competition's coming.
Yep.
Focus, folks. We were at 32% for the top 25% of performers in this industry. Competition's coming.
Don't tell anyone.
Peter, my personal opinion is it's not from the big roll-up plays. I actually think it's going to be from sophisticated operators in local markets.
Totally agree.
figure out how to scale in a local market. Talking JWB in Jacksonville with over 4,800 units in one market. Okay, I think that's where the competition is going to come from overly fee-matched companies potentially. Okay, so what I want to do now is pivot to some data because guys, this is the Profit Power Hour with Daniel Craig, and we do data around here. And I want to share just some insights from the National PM Pricing Report. Really, this is a handbook for monetization strategies, okay? And what I think this does is present an overview of what's been working, what's been happening, and also frames the conversation around maybe some of the things that are going to be shifting with government regulation. What we're going to get into in a few minutes is how to think about sort of protecting your backside as it relates to perhaps what are some of your significant revenue streams. And so what we're going to look at is what are those significant revenue streams? And then we're going to talk about what are some of the potential concerns around those revenue streams. Okay, so we're going to dive in and I'm going to share my screen here. So this is an analysis that we did last year based off of a survey of 200 property management companies. And if you like the looks of any of this data, I'm actually going to give you a PDF summary of this. If you say yes in just a few moments, sorry, so you have to actually raise your hand. And this is that's going to really summarize a lot of what we're talking about here. But what we did was basically put together a list of the top 29 revenue streams that we saw in a lot of different companies and markets, and just started to look at those in comparison to each other in terms of revenue per unit contribution, in terms of customer reception, and in terms of also what actual rollout looks like in terms of specific prices. So this is phenomenal data if you're looking to kind of see what are people doing and what do you have access to. So this summary page here basically gives a bird's eye view of number one, the top 10 fees in terms of revenue contribution. And this does not include management fees. All right. I think we're all charging management fees, so that wasn't really interesting to talk about here. Leasing fee, number one. Number two, pet fee. That one's got to surprise some people on this call. Because there's a lot of people that are still not doing that. An owner renewal fee, also very significant. Resident benefits package, owner property protection program, so on and so forth. You can see what is contributing the most revenue per unit. Now, what's interesting, and this really gets to the whole concept of value versus monetization, is customer reception. Customer reception. And this is either the tenant or the owner based off of whether or not it's a tenant or owner paid fee, okay? Peter, feel free to jump in here at any point. Customer reception, the owner holiday gift fee, okay? Owner property protection program. That's interesting. What's interesting about this is this is, done by some people, but honestly, it's not super common. And I think it's not super common because it sort of fell out of favor, I would say roughly 2 years ago, because people got pretty concerned about eviction protection in terms of insurance like product. But there's people that are now offering this with true insurance products. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Application fee, leasing fee, owner setup fee, owner renewal fee, owner inspection fee, owner initial pet fee. Notice what's not on here. Resident benefits package and monthly pet fee. Okay, so that's interesting.
Not on there because it ranked too low.
Too low
to make the top 10. Yeah.
To make the top 10. Yeah. So you got these guys right here, top 10 in terms of revenue contribution. They're not even in the top 10 in terms of customer reception.
So it kind of implies that people are begrudgingly paying those fees.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So then moving on, this is top 10 in terms of portfolio adoption, owner inspection fee, resident benefits package. Now this adoption rate is high. I can guarantee you because of the fact that most people roll out a resident benefits package guaranteed. Sorry, as a mandatory fee. So that's one reason this is so high. Tenant liability insurance, owner holiday gift fee, tenant pet fee, so on and so forth. And by the way, Todd is asking, can I explain better what customer reception is? And the basic, I forget the exact question, Todd, that we asked in the survey, but we were asking PMs on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the, reception of the fee as you rolled it out, 10 being positive, 1 being negative. So it was just that kind of scale rating. It was the PM's experience of rolling this out. And then industry adoption, application fee, 91%, tenant late fee, 89%. None of these are surprising. Leasing fee, 80%. And then you get down to some of the newer fees, like resident benefits package. This is interesting to me. This is a massive, massive revenue stream for a lot of companies, but only 55% of companies are doing this. Tenant pet fee, 49%, tenant initial pet fee, 44%, and then tenant lease initiation fee, 42%. So those are some high level points of comparison in terms of top 10 fees. Josh is asking, is that an accurate number though? Isn't that really subjective to the PM company and how they did it? Absolutely. It certainly is. But I think what that is representative of is their experience. And if it wasn't conducted in an effective way, maybe what happened was they implemented it as a straight monetization strategy without thinking through the value components well enough. Peter, your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with that. And there was a couple surprises here for me. One was I thought we were the only ones who didn't charge a leasing fee. We're mad savages over here, not charging a leasing fee. I know Daniel, you personally, and various others at Profit Coach have really given me a hard time about that over the years. Probably rightly so, but it turns out 19% of
Peter, just me and 81% of the industry.
yeah, right, exactly. But I was actually surprised it wasn't higher. So 19% of property managers aren't charging a lease renewal fee.
Yeah.
There's a couple fees that I've heard of recently that I thought were worth mentioning. So traditionally, the the owner pays a lease renewal fee. That's pretty common. We charge for that. But some people charge residents as well for a lease renewal. So that's interesting.
It's right here. Tenant renewal fee
Yeah.
is, in fact, let's just go ahead and use this as an example. So folks, how this works is you can scroll over and see specific data on any one of these. So we're going to go to tenant renewal fee right here and click on this, and we can see the data on this. So adoption on this is roughly 37% in the industry.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And then it's also it's interesting to think about charging owners a renewal fee for their PMA.
Yeah.
I've heard of some people doing that as well. I'm not sure if that's in here or not. But as you think about fees, there's ways. I sort of think of these as like on like a grid, and it's like tenant or owner, and then mandatory or optional. And so you want to think about, how am I monetizing the tenant and what value is the tenant receiving? How am I monetizing the owner and what value is the owner receiving? And do I make these optional or do I make them mandatory?
Yes. And it's that nexus of, if we had that in a quadrant, if you had, that in 4 quadrants, owner paid fees here, tenant paid fees here, mandatory here, optional here, your high risk area is tenant mandatory. Okay.
Yes. That is the highest regulatory risk fee, and potentially the highest, not only in terms of like that fee may be at risk in terms of like it may be outlawed in the future, but also it may make you a target for your state or your city. If they feel that you're charging tenants a mandatory fee that they don't like, they may try and find a way to make your life miserable, whether or not it's technically legal.
Yes. So this is the PDF that we'd love to share with you today. I'm going to give you a poll in just a moment to opt into this, along with Peter's newsletter. But basically, the way this works is there's a summary of the data that we just looked at in terms of how all of these fees rank together by revenue per unit, contribution, customer reception, portfolio adoption. And so you can kind of get a sense of what the industry is doing and where some of the main revenue opportunities are. And then how people are ranking these in terms of top 10 in various categories. And then there's just some phenomenal data, leasing fee. What are people doing in terms of the structure of the fee? What's the, if you're doing flat, what's the minimum and maximum? If you're doing percent of rent, what's the minimum and maximum? And then you can kind of see where all of the results plot out. If we look at something like, yeah, that's leasing. Let's go down to maybe pet fee for just a moment. Oh, tenant renewal fee. So, is this charged flat or percent of rent? What's the average revenue per unit contribution? Where are people's pricing in general? So just a really, really great way to see what's going on in specific opportunities that you should consider as monetization strategies if you have a value strategy to connect to it. Okay. And that's what we're trying to say. Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I want to highlight one thing. So you look at the spreadsheet you shared, you look at this report, it's a lot of data, it's a lot of graphs and numbers and charts. But I want to sort of set the scene for a minute of what this really is for a property management company owner. If you operate a business within an industry, wouldn't you want to know how other people in your industry make money?
Right.
Would that be interesting to you as a business owner? I think it would. I think,
Yeah.
I think that sounds interesting. Oh, I own a business. It's a flower shop. I wonder how other flower shops make money. Do they charge by the stem? Do they charge by the petal? Do they charge for someone to walk in? Do they charge for an appointment? Do they give discounts for multiple? What happened? That should be fascinating to you as the owner of a flower shop.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, no one's taken the time to ever put that data together, so there's no way to know. Actually, someone did do that. Danny Craig and his team did all this work for you, and they're giving it away for free. So
Yeah.
maybe I can consult with Danny later on his monetization strategy, but for now, you're getting this for free. So this is incredibly valuable. And let me drill a little deeper on that. If you feel like your business isn't making enough money and you see some of the benchmarks that flashed across the screen earlier, and you're like, wow, there's people that are making 30% profit margins, 35% profit margins. How can I do that? It's right here, bro. It's
Yeah.
all here. It's all
Right.
here. Just look at the list of fees and check off the ones you're already charging. Maybe take a look to see how much other people are charging, but you kind of already got those ones covered. And then look at the other ones that you're not charging and look at the reception to give you an idea of how well those may be received. And take solace in the fact that some double-digit percentage of your peers are already charging that fee,
Yeah.
which means tens of thousands of property management business owners across the country are already doing this.
Yeah.
That should make you feel very comfortable with trying out something new for you, which can be scary. I know that as a property management business owner. First time we rolled out our pet protection program, first time we rolled out our resident benefits package, first time we increased our lease renewal fee, that was scary because I didn't have this data. So I heard anecdotally at conferences, hey, you should really look into this fee. Me and my buddy are charging it. It's great. I'm like, okay, great. So 2 property managers across the whole country are charging this and they're making some money. I guess I'll try it out, but that sounds scary. But actually with this report, now you know that there's tons of people doing this.
That's right. So I'll just walk through how to use this real fast. And this isn't the full report. The full report is you can buy it. So there's a little monetization
Oh,
strategy.
you can buy it. Okay, sorry. I thought it was free.
No. This version I'm on my screen is free. This is just 10 of the 29 fees. Okay?
Got it.
You want the full meal deal, you can buy it. But here is the tenant pet fee. All right. So here's how it's charged. 70% due flat. Some 25% due tiered by criteria. Okay. So there's based on POS score or whatnot. All right. Here's the minimum and here's the maximum. Did you know this? I've got a client, folks, that's charging $100 a month per pet. It's crazy. Some people are charging 10% of rent for a monthly pet fee.
So,
Okay.
so this is like challenge accepted, right? If you're reading this, you should be like, all right, I'm gonna crank this up to 101. Like, no, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
No, that's not what we're
No, I'm
saying.
just kidding.
Estimated monthly revenue per unit contribution, $12 per unit per month across the portfolio. That's not just on the people that have it, right? It's across the portfolio. And then the scatter plot just is a beautiful way to see like what's the range. And you can see most everybody's, there's a bunch of dots on the 25 line, a bunch of dots on the 50 line, and a few outliers, right? So that just shows you really clearly where pricing is in general. And then, how do people market this fee, et cetera. And then here's how people rolled it out. 96% of people rolled this out as a mandatory fee if you have a pet. Only a small handful of people did it as optional. What was the overall
Optional pet fee. Yeah, that's
exactly. Well, I have an idea on this, Peter, and I know someone's going to take what I'm about to say and make a business out of it. Are you guys ready for this? The pet benefit package. I'm not kidding. It can
okay.
totally be done. I'm
Pitch
talking
me.
like concierge benefits for pets, insurance for pets. I'm not joking. Someone
Mobile
needs
dog grooming.
local exact mobile dog grooming. There is going to be a pet benefit package. I almost guarantee it in the future.
People spend more on pets. So in the U.S., more money is spent annually on pets than children.
Like I
Did
said,
you know that?
there's going to be a pet benefit package. Industry adoption, 49%. 47% do not charge this fee, and a small sliver of people cannot charge this fee. All right, so that's a little bit of just how this works. Now, for the moment you've been waiting for, if you would like this, if you want to get access to the 2023 National PM Pricing Report PDF summary, free version with 10 of the 29 fees, plus get access to Peter's newsletter with real-time industry insights, say yes, please. And I highly recommend you say yes. Okay, so that's a little bit of some phenomenal data that we wanted to get in front of you guys today. These are monetization strategies. And so what I want to do now is I want to pivot back to the conversation that we've been having about value. We've talked a little bit about what is the future of fee maxing, regulation trends, and we want to talk specifically around specific vulnerabilities. And Peter, you talked about this a little bit. I would say there's basically two areas of vulnerability, right? There's mandatory mandatory tenant fees. That's area number one. And by the way, sometimes I hear people say, oh, we can't charge that fee in California. No, you can charge tenants anything you want to charge them in any state, in any city in the country if they opt into it. Okay? All right? So don't let anybody tell you we can't charge that fee. If they opt into it, you can charge it if there's an exchange there of some value, okay? It's the mandatory tenant fees that are the risky piece here. So let's talk about what some of those are. Peter, I'm thinking pet fees.
Yep. Resident benefit
Although
packages.
honestly, I haven't heard a lot about pet fees as being risky on the tenant side. I've heard about it more on the guarantee as it relates to the guarantee insurance-like guarantee that's being provided to owners. What's your feedback on that?
Yeah, that's right. So there's been a lot of discussion within the industry recently about insurance programs, guarantees. Are these things legal? Are they not? Now, I'm not an expert in these areas. I've done a lot of reading and I've done a lot of talking with folks. My understanding as it relates to a guarantee is that you can make guarantees as a business. And if you think about it, when you shop at any company, they have all kinds of guarantees. Money back guarantee, guarantee this, we guarantee quality of our work, blah, blah, blah. The situation is you can't charge extra for that. If you charge extra to get the guarantee, if you charge the customer extra to get the guarantee, now that's insurance. This is my complete layperson's understanding. I got to credit Todd O for the clarity that I'm delivering here. So if this is wrong, he's wrong.
Nice.
or I'm bangling the explanation. Now, when we talk about pet fees specifically, so pet protection program, which we have, We charge residents pet rent, and we give owners a pet guarantee. Because we're not charging owners for the pet guarantee, it's not insurance. That's my understanding, is that's totally legal and okay. And when we move to the renter's insurance side of things, you can't mandate you can mandate that a resident carry insurance, but you can't mandate that they buy it through you. And so, first off, you just can't make it mandatory that they buy insurance for you. And secondly, as an important follow-up point, if you have a resident benefits package, you can make the package mandatory, at least in most states, but you can't make the insurance part of that mandatory. So if you have a resident benefits package with insurance included, which we do at our management company, you need to allow the resident to unbundle the renter's insurance portion of that. So if they provide evidence of their own insurance, you reduce the cost of the resident benefits package by precisely your cost of the renter's insurance. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do.
Okay.
So I hope that helps somebody.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And by the way, I need to like caveat what I said about you can charge tenants anything. Like obviously you can't offer them products that you're not licensed to offer, like insurance. Okay. So the basic point is though, if they want to opt into a pet benefit package that has products that you're legally allowed to sell, then you can charge them that fee. And this is why I actually think that from one perspective, like folks, if you believe in your resident benefits package, why are you that worried if your state says you can't make it mandatory, right? Like just go back to sales 101, get the value proposition together and crush it on the sales side of things. So I that's where I think this is going to be shifting some of the conversations. We're actually going to have to go back to the drawing board and look at things like a pet fee and say, all right, well, I can't provide a guarantee to an owner, but what could I provide them instead? Maybe I provide them with, monthly pet, presence inspections or, pet carpet treatments, right? These sorts of things where we get back to the value conversation related to our monetization strategies.
Yeah, and think about an airline, right? Baggage fees on most airlines are mandatory. Trip interruption insurance is optional.
Yeah.
So upgrading your seat is optional. Those are fee maxing programs. Those are the equivalent of their optional resident benefit package in their industry. Doesn't mean you make everything optional, like they're going to charge you for bags regardless, but it's useful to think about how do they think about that? Why do they decide that some are optional and some are mandatory?
Yeah. Okay, so we got some really cool stuff that we want to cover here, and the time is ticking. Peter, you already talked about the insurance or guarantee related programs, some considerations on those. Want to encourage people to check out some alternatives with like true blue insurance programs that cover things like eviction, property protection, rent protection. I don't know that I've seen one for pets yet, but different things that you can get as a true insurance product to loop and make money off of it through programs like SureVestor or SteadyRent.com. So check those out. I hope that's helpful. So where I want to go now is I want to talk about the future of data-driven value creation. And this really goes to a question that Shirley asked, which was, what's the best way to present monetization so it doesn't come across as nickel and diming? And I think data-driven value creation can be an answer to that. All right. And so what I want to do here is talk a little bit about what there's, if you can't charge certain fees, what's left to you? Well, what's left is to actually increase the value pie, right? Which is not a bad thing to do. And there's a lot of opportunity for innovation around this. And so what I want to present is a basic methodology that I think is going to become commonplace. And my plan, if you want to look at the Profit Coach business plan, is that Profit Coach is going to lead the way in facilitating this. And what this strategy looks like is a very granular approach to actually identifying the key value components in a customer experience. Now, to set this conversation up, I want to invoke Alex Hormozi for just a moment here. And folks, I really think that if you pay attention to what I'm about to tell you or explain to you, this may change your perspective on value creation and monetization. So according to Alex Hormozy, value equation is this. And basically, it's number one, the dream outcome. What is it that I really want as a customer? Times or amplified by my perception of likelihood of achievement. Okay. And then that's the positive side of the equation. The negative side of the equation is what takes away from that is my delay, my time delay in experiencing that outcome, plus the relative effort and sacrifice. Okay. And so what that means is there's a whole world of value creation that's separate from exactly what you do. All right. You can have two companies that provide a leasing service, but one of those connect that leasing service to a dream outcome with guarantees and data that amplify the likelihood of me getting the dream tenant in my unit that never leaves. And this property management company has the data to show me that their days on market is actually 6 relative to the industry average of 20. And so now what this property management company has done is they've connected leasing to an emotional dream outcome connected with amplifying the perception of that being accomplished through testimonials or data, reputation, whatever it might be. And then they communicate speed, which is this is only going to take 4 days and it's completely automated. You won't have to do anything. And they communicate the nature of the process in such a way. And by the way, they've designed the process through data-driven process design in such a way that they've decreased the time delay and the effort and sacrifice, and value goes through the roof. So with that concept, Peter, you're about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let me maybe simplify this a little bit. So
Yeah.
you're looking at this equation. It's called the value equation, whatever. This is a formula of how you can make more money.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. Like, if you want to make more money, this equation is how to think about how to make the most money, or in other words, how you can charge more because you're delivering more value, right? So this equation is explaining the value that a customer is going to receive, and you can capture that through through money, through money they pay you, right? So now it's really interesting to think about that. So we have 2 customers. Interesting. That actually presents.
To use my leasing example, you could charge a 1.5 month leasing fee. No.
Yeah.
I'm just saying theoretically, you could amplify your value so much that
Right.
you could actually go, not just a full month's rent, but who's to say 1 month's rent is the barrier? Maybe it's 1.25, maybe it's 1.5.
Correct. So it's worth thinking through so we're kind of lucky in a sense that we have 2 customers, because we have 2 people, two groups of people we can deliver value to and drive revenue from. But it's worth thinking through, what's the dream outcome for my investor client, my property owner client?
Yes.
And what's the dream outcome for my resident?
Segmentation.
Yep. So what is the dream outcome for those 2 groups? And if I can figure out how to deliver more or closer to or faster of that dream outcome, you can that's an opportunity to create a new product or a new service or a new way to monetize what you're doing, or some future or different thing that you could do.
And this is also, to your point, Peter, this is why niching and segmenting your owner customer base is so important, because now you can have the opportunity of getting to different pricing strategies and monetization strategies relative to the unique dream outcomes for different segments of your market. So I want to give you some mechanics in just a moment on how to actually go about this. But what I want to do in just before the top of the hour is, let me just skip a couple of slides here. I want to give an opportunity to dive deeper into this. And specifically, let me just pop back a few slides here. So I want to give you the opportunity to dive into a conversation with our team about, well, sorry guys, here we go, about where you stand and what this pricing report could actually mean for you. Um, Obviously, getting context from the NARPM 2022 Financial Benchmarks Guide is really valuable, but we want to give you the opportunity to dive deeper into this data in your business. So, and figure out specifically what is the fastest way to impact your pricing. So this looks like a strategy session specifically focused on pricing with our coaching team. And what we would do is help you actually look at your P&L, help you discover how you stack up to the NARPM revenue per unit aggressiveness benchmarks that we talked about earlier. Answer the 3 pricing strategy questions, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And then based off of the data from the 2023 National PM Pricing Report, help you identify your #1 opportunity to maximize revenue per unit using that data. And so you send us your P&L. We help you actually, based off of your P&L, know where you are today, right? A lot of people don't even know what their true revenue per unit is. And then based off your average rent, what your target could be based off of the revenue per unit aggressiveness benchmarks that we sent. Then on the strategy call, we'll help you see how you stack up to the benchmarks, answer these pricing strategy questions, which are specifically, what is your next big opportunity? Where can you extend your current victories when it comes to pricing, and how do you need to protect your flanks when it comes to pricing? And then we will actually go through this is a tool we use with our clients. It's our revenue per unit fast forecaster. And what you will come out of this conversation with is actually a forecast that's based off of what you would charge, what your adoption rates are, and what the net outcome would be in terms of revenue on the year from a new service or fee. So if this would be valuable to you, 0 strings attached. You guys are still wondering where my monetization strategy is. That comes later. But we'd love to have that conversation with you. And I'm just going to throw up a quick poll to give you the opportunity to dive into that. And specifically, when it comes to pricing strategy, what I want to encourage you to do is to think about how you are actually going to make this a recurring process in your business. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. All right, so back to where we were. We were talking about, I'm just going to scroll right through here. We were talking about how you actually go about a data-driven pricing strategy in your business. We talked about this slide from Alex Hormozi. So I'm going to give you 4 ideas here. And this is what I think a data-driven value creation process actually looks like. #1, define the key value milestones in the owner and resident lifecycle. Okay. So what this looks like, maybe Peter, you can help me unpack this a little bit from your PM experience. But essentially what this looks like is understanding what are the actual points in a leasing process, or in a tenant onboarding process, or in the application screening process, or in the renewal process, where there's opportunities to create and amplify value either for owners and residents. Peter, you want to unpack that anymore?
Yeah, so going back to what I mentioned earlier, the pricing monetization strategy that we all inherited, someone at one point sat down and did this, not consciously, but they were intuitive about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided that leasing up a property was a key milestone in the owner life cycle.
Exactly.
Which it is.
Uh-huh.
And they decided to monetize that event by charging a leasing fee. Yeah. So that was kind of the caveman version of what we're going to be trying to do as an industry moving forward. Now that the industry has evolved so much and we have so much sophistication in the tools that we use, we should be able to identify other key milestones that are valuable to property owners and residents in the life cycle of them as a customer of our business, and monetize those or tie those value creation points to how we charge for our services.
Exactly. And that could be milestones, not just like leasing, but within the leasing process itself. Like an example of that would be speed to listing time. All right. So owner onboards, what the next key value milestone there is, how fast does their property get on the internet, right? And if we can begin to measure that time across the industry and then correlate customer satisfaction at that actual value delivery point, people will begin to amplify value or to increase value by paying attention to key milestones within the process itself. And then as they define those critical SLAs and service expectations around those key milestones, maybe it's like, hey guys, when a new owner onboards, we need to have their the property ready for rent in X days, and that needs to be listed on the internet in X days. Once we define those critical expectations, what those milestones are, we can begin to measure the experience at the level of each of those interactions.
Yeah, let me bring in a cool example here. You go to mail a letter. If you need it there next day, you pay extra for expediting.
Right.
If you don't really care, you're not in a rush, you just put a stamp on it and pop it in the blue bin.
Exactly.
For a property owner who's in a rush, which I know that's none of our owners, but for a theoretical property owner who might be in a rush to lease up a unit, you could offer an expedited lease up service for a fee. And you could say, we guarantee our that we will have a tenant moved in the property within 2 weeks for an extra $1,000. Every day that we miss on our SLA, or on, let's say the tenant moves in 14 days instead of 10 days or whatever, we will credit you back XYZ. Like, you come up with all kinds of schemes here, but this is just something to get you thinking.
Exactly. That's a great example. And by the way, to your question, Paige, what have you seen other companies do in balancing a declining market, revenue per unit and fee maxing like this? This is getting clear on these value milestones and then monetizing them is what we're talking about as the alternative. And so then once you have that data about what's actually going on at each interaction in your key processes, you can then leverage that data to increase value by tweaking the process, right? So like, hey guys, we're going to actually redesign our lease renewal process with this key SLA target in mind of so many days to list. So you can take that data, and based on the feedback that you're getting from your customers, you can go redesign your process. This is data-driven process design. And then you can also, if the data is positive in terms of the experience, you can use that to fuel your reputation, drive organic referrals, and ultimately increase the value equation that we've been talking about in such a way that would increase their general willingness to pay. And that could be, tied to a particular event like a speed to list, and you get expedited listing for this fee, or just in general, I think you can begin to demonstrate the value in your company based off this data that would allow you to even just charge a higher management fee. Any other thoughts?
Let me give one more quick example. I gave an example from the owner side of the expedited onboarding fee. I'll give an example for the resident side. We all know that people are willing to pay for experiences. Second Nature is famous for making this point. Experiences are something that are sort of the modern economy. So think about airlines again. Think about a 747 flying across the country. It's a tube. You're in the tube. You're within the oval shape of that pressurized vessel going across the country. So is everybody else. You're all getting there. You're all leaving at the same time. You're all getting there at the same time. That's the point of air travel. Wouldn't it be crazy if different people were paying different prices for the same exact thing, which is to go from here to there? That sounds impossible. What idiot would pay more for the same exact, you leave at 10:47, you arrive at 3:23, right? Well, guess what? The airlines figured out how to segment and price segment their customers and get people to pay way more for the same thing for a better experience. Think of that tube as the four walls of the home that you manage. Mm-hmm. Right now, all residents essentially pay the same rent. They pay the same amount to live within the four walls. There is a way to provide additional value and charge more, optional, not mandatory, you make it optional, and capture some of that value. So think about the airlines and how they did that. What could you do as a property manager to deliver a better experience for a resident living within the four walls of a home that you manage, such that they would happily pay 20% more in rent? What would you have to do in order to deliver an experience that would be worth it for a resident to pay that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like my challenge.
Yes. And by the way, we got a question from Josh Sissel that came in here. Tenant renewal fee. I've never been able to see how I can provide value with this fee. Am I missing something here? And the question, this is probably a good example, Peter. I don't think you charge a tenant renewal fee. The question could be like, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But the question is like, is the tenant having the option to guarantee a place to live for the next 12 months of value to them in your business? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then secondly, does it take work for you to actually create that guaranteed outcome for them in the form of providing them with the option to renew again?
Right.
So that's to your point, Josh, like that's kind of up to you. But yes, that would potentially be the value, is some value around a guaranteed future outcome, such as the ability to stay in the home for another 12 months and the work that it takes for you to provide that to them as a justification for a tenant renewal fee. But that's a lot of that value is going to rest on the PM to define and create.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up here. As we wrap up, I want to give you some really interesting data. I know there's 89 left of you here, which is about 89%. So great retention. We're going to go just a couple more minutes. And I want to share some data that I had our team pull just last week. Peter, you're going to love this. So a couple of years ago, we did this analysis in terms of how does revenue per unit aggressiveness impact new unit growth. And basically what we found is, yes, as you get more aggressive, you actually generally see more units being added. So the point is, there's really no negative impact on growth when it comes to revenue per unit aggressiveness in general. But then last week I asked the team to look at what are the impacts of tiered versus non-tiered pricing structures on new unit growth. And the reason that this is important is because tiered pricing is a monetization pricing strategy that's designed to give a segmented value proposition to a segment of your user base. And I thought these results were actually interesting and, to be honest, surprising. So when you look at the average new units from companies that had a percentage but not tiered pricing plan, it's right around 6.69. Average new units from flat fee, not tiered, is an average of 5.55. So don't do that. Average new units of companies with percentage pricing and not tiered, 6.64. Average new units for companies with flat fee tiered pricing, 12.6.
That's us. We're flat fee tiered. I'm one of the 9 in that, I think.
You're one of the 9. Okay, so there's a little bit of a data representation issue here. You can see that, this is the most common, and only 9 companies are doing this. And so what I did was I looked at the top 10 companies that are adding the most units, and here they are. Okay, this is the average number of units they're adding per month, and it's a 50-50 representation between tiered and not tiered. So all of that to say, there's very few people that are doing tiered pricing. I'm not convinced that that's like the way to do it. Half the companies in the top 10 are using it, half of them are not. But it is a successful monetization and pricing strategy that's designed to correlate value to pricing. So
Yeah. Now my challenge is, what would a tiered rent option look like?
exactly.
What would the bronze, silver, and gold lease look like for a
Yes.
resident?
Yes. Yeah. that sounds like something that could be regulated, but we'll move on. Okay, so what I want to leave you with is I'm going to skip some of these slides. We already talked about these. I'm going to leave you with some practical next steps. And I want to give you 3 pricing strategy questions. And this is modified from Jim Collins' Essence of Strategy from Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. And he correlates to these questions to strategy in general. But I think they're really relevant to pricing in particular here. Number 1 is, what's our next big bet? So Jim Collins says the essence of strategy in business is asking yourself these 3 questions. And this is very relevant to pricing. What's our next big bet? If you're not asking yourself this question about value creation and monetization on a regular basis in your industry, a regular basis in your company, you're probably not going to keep up with the times when it comes to pricing. Okay. So what is your next big bet? How are you going to leverage data-driven value creation? Some of the crazy ideas that Peter's thrown out on this call to increase value creation and monetization. one of the things Jim Collins says in relationship to this is fire bullets than cannonballs. And the idea is, it's the idea of constant experimentation. Be constantly firing bullets. And, we've seen different people like, Brad Larson experience some negative impact from some of the things that he's tried. But the thing I love about Brad is he's constantly firing bullets. That guy is constantly innovating when it comes to pricing. And I know about some of the bullets that he's tried that haven't worked, but I can tell you, he's got some cannonballs that have worked, and I know they're working, e.g. his owner benefit package. So fire bullets than cannonballs, constantly firing bullets. Make this a recurring quarterly exercise in your business to be thinking through what is our next big bet when it comes to value creation and monetization.
Yeah, at the very least,
Yes, go ahead.
you should be looking at your owner pricing structure once a year. That's
Yeah,
the bare minimum. We've been doing
yes,
that for years. Very effective.
yeah. Um, Secondly, how can we extend our victories? Okay, what's working well in your business from pricing? How can you add an exponent onto this? A simple example might be your resident benefits package. Like, okay, we rolled out the resident benefits, or I'll take another example. Maybe it's the pet protection program. Like we rolled it out, yeah, it was great. Okay, but what's your adoption? Like if you use the data that we just provided earlier in the call, that the top 25% of companies get 32% adoption on that fee. If you're only at 15, you could double the outcome from your resident benefits package, extend that victory by just increasing your adoption rate on something that you're already doing. Okay.
Yeah. So the SaaS companies call this revenue expansion, which is getting more revenue from existing customers. And the way to think about this is sales. You assign a competent salesperson within your organization. You say, we've got 15% of our residents or our owners on thus and such program. We have a company target to get that to 30. Here's the list. Start making calls, start sending emails, start sending text messages. It's just sales. That's all it is. Call them up, say, hey, I don't know if you know, we offer this program. Let me explain why, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And then the last question is, how can we protect our flakes? If you have concerns about the resident benefit package not being allowed to be mandatory in your area, how can you make your resident benefit package so freaking compelling that people opt in, that your tenants opt in because it's just that great, right? That's an example of how you can protect your flanks on any number of different fees. All right, so 3 pricing strategy questions to really help you get practical. Now, I'm going to wrap up with this. I want to encourage you to establish a pricing process in your business. A pricing process is a quarterly operationalized team endeavor focused on value maximization. There's 2 components. There's a quarterly review component and there's an implementation component. I'm going to blow through this and we'll be done. Number 1, the quarterly review component. Value. What is our value proposition and how can we make it even more compelling for our target personas? This is what we've been talking about, okay? You can use data to do this. Revenue per unit and budget targets. What is our revenue per unit budget? Where do we need to be to hit our financial goals? And what's our target? Where could we be relative to our value? So that frames the big picture conversation. Come back to this on a quarterly basis. Then structure. What changes could we make to our structure to better reflect the priorities of our target personas? Once you know who your target audience is, how can you modify your pricing structure, your monetization strategy to best reflect what's important to them? Number 3, fee additions and changes. What pricing changes, additions will better communicate and monetize our value proposition? Number 3, messaging and presentation. How can we improve our messaging and presentation of value to more accurately reflect our full value proposition? This is the conversation that I can guarantee if you have this on a quarterly basis, you are going to see very significant increases in revenue per unit over the long haul. So those are our strategies for helping you beat the benchmark in pricing. Peter, thank you so much. Any final closing comments?
Nope, I'm all good. This was really fun, Daniel. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Up next, Wednesday, March 27 at 12 p.m., episode 3 of the 2024 Profit Power Hour. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here, for being part of this great community, for the great interaction and chat. And we hope you have a great day. Thanks, Peter.
Bye, everybody.